podcast. I'm your co-host, Jared Smith.
And I am Nick Nenad.
And guys, we got another football-packed show for you guys. We are going to first dive into the College Football Playoff. Nick, we had the championship games this weekend. It was a big weekend. There was a lot of movement that we normally don't see in the College Football Playoff. So we're going to start with that. A little later on in the show, we're going to get into the NFL. We're actually recording this on Monday. It's about 3:40 right now. So about an hour and a half from the Monday Night Football kickoff. A big game with the Bills and the Patriots. So we've already talked about that last week, but just so you guys know, we are recording right before that game. So if anything happens before that game, we'll definitely let you know. We're also going to talk about Week 13's games on Sunday. Nick's got his Jones jersey, his Cardinals jersey back there. They once again won. So we're going to get into some of the top teams in the NFL as we head down into the last, 4 or 5 weeks left of the regular season.
Not that much.
It's coming down to the wire now. We're starting to see a little clearer picture with the NFL playoffs starting to come into form. But like I said, Nick, we got to start with the college football playoffs. The 4 teams are finally set. If you don't know, Alabama and Cincinnati will play each other. Alabama number 1, Cincinnati comes in at number 4. And the 2-3 matchup, number 2 Michigan faces number 3 Georgia, right? So one game that seems very interesting. That could be a blowout. But Nick, let's just jump right into it, my man. Out of these 2 games, where do you want to start with this? Do you want to start with the championship games this weekend? Do you want to start with the games, the college football playoff games? Where would you like to go?
You know what? I say, let's just talk about these rankings real quick. We've been talking about them all year. Let's talk about what we think with the with Alabama being number 1 and Michigan being number 2 and Georgia number 3 and Cincinnati being number 4 undefeated. I think there still is a little bit of discussion to be had there about what we think the college football playoff should have been. Let me just start this off. We were both wrong. Jerry, we both thought Georgia would end up winning that SEC championship game. I think one of us would have been right if Georgia had won the SEC championship game about our Final Four, but we are not. And then, just like we said, Jared, of course, we come in here and Alabama's number 1. Nobody thought that would happen, right? Like even coming into last week or 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, no one thought Alabama would be number 1 going into the college football playoff, and they are. Cincinnati does get in. But yeah, Jared, let's talk about those rankings. Alabama is number 1. They get the big win, the big dominant win against Georgia. Like we said, none of us expected that. And Michigan's number 2 with a very, very dominant win over Iowa. Pretty expected, but still very dominant. Georgia moves down to 3. Not number 2, and Cincinnati number 4. I think obviously the only argument you could come up with Cincinnati not being number 4 would be that they're undefeated and they should be somehow ahead of these one-loss teams. But I think, Jared, we kind of think Cincinnati's a little tough to put in anyways. So the best they're going to do is 4. There's no way they're number say. So one of the reasons
be happy with 4. Be happy.
I had them losing this week, so it's the way it goes. But yeah, here I'll give my thoughts on the rankings. I thought that it was interesting when I saw Alabama number 1 and Michigan number 2 because I thought that Michigan, they were behind Georgia, which is fine. Obviously, Georgia was undefeated going into last week. But such a dominant win against Ohio State, who all of us held in really high regard the week before, puts them at number 2, right? And Michigan did nothing wrong. They just beat the crap out of Iowa, right? And scored 40 points on a team that didn't allow 40 points to a lot of teams this year, okay? And Georgia, they lose to Alabama. Alabama gets the win. It's pretty dominant. But I see it like this. Georgia knew they were in the college football playoff. I think they could have made some changes. I think there was things they could have done in that game that was different. I'm not saying Georgia didn't try to win that game. Of course they did. I was almost surprised at how much they tried to. I thought maybe JT Daniels would be thrown in there at some point just because they're like, who cares? We're in, right? If we have to rematch this team, we rematch this team. It literally doesn't matter, right? I had some idiots I talked to this week, and they're like, Georgia lost so late that they're out of the college football playoff. Stop it. Okay, stop. All right. Yeah.
Get out of here, man.
And I think that's where, I think that's where I'm going to go with this with my rankings. I thought Michigan should be number one. I get that Alabama gets the big win over dominant Georgia, but Michigan didn't do anything wrong. So why are they, why are they kept in the same spot? And they don't get the luxury of, beating up on Cincinnati, for example. They unfortunately now have to go and play frickin' Georgia, who's pissed off they lost, and Michigan essentially has the national championship game before the national championship game. Like, it's kind of brutal. So I thought Michigan didn't do anything wrong, and again, this is where the College Football Playoff Committee didn't make a lot of sense with this. If you valued Michigan's win so much that you put them up to number 2 last week, why is Alabama's win it's again, we're going to get into a bunch of it, but Alabama lost to Texas A&M, who's what are they ranked like super high in the rankings, like 25 or something? What's their ranking, or are they even ranked at all in the college football playoff? Yeah, number 25. All right, literally the worst ranking you possibly could be in the college football playoff. That's Alabama's one loss. Michigan's one loss, according to the college football playoff, is to number 10. So why the hell is Michigan not number 1? And why is that win? You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. Ohio State was number 2. So I got Michigan number 1. Alabama number 2, Georgia number 3, Cincinnati number 4. That's it. No other.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you what. And it's the same question that you did. And my thinking was Michigan should be number 1. They beat Ohio State handedly, right? And in the game, in the rivalry of all rivalry games. And then they go out dominantly and kill Iowa. So yes, I was like, ooh, are they going to put Michigan at number 1? What are they going to do? But then Alabama came out and dominated the number 1 team in the country in Georgia, who people might have thought were untouchable. Like, that defense was touted as like one of the best defenses of all time in all of college football, right? So I think because Alabama beat Georgia so handedly, that loss to Texas A&M was so long ago. I don't want to say that it's completely forgotten, but it's definitely like not fresh in people's minds. Also, Alabama, even though they squeaked a win out in the Iron Bowl against Auburn, like, that was over a month ago, right? What Alabama did to Georgia was so great. I think that overshadowed Michigan's win against Iowa, not necessarily against Ohio State, because that is the game of all games. But the win, Michigan's, drumming of Iowa was, I think, more expected, to whereas Alabama's dominance over Georgia was not. And so the one and only reason why Alabama deserves to be at number 1 and not number 2 is because they dominated. If they would have just beat Georgia by 3 and it was like a back and forth close game like that, then I think Michigan would have every right to be at number 1. But because Alabama dominated, right, I can't argue with Alabama being number 1. I simply can't. Also, from the standpoint, I think if I was the committee, you have to look at it and say, okay, if you did put Michigan at number 1 and then Alabama at number 2, Alabama and Georgia are playing again right away, back to back, right? What I think the committee was trying to do was say, realistically, Alabama-Georgia is probably the best matchup out of all 4 of these teams. And I think they're banking on the fact that Alabama can beat Cincinnati, which is more than likely going to happen, and that Georgia will be pissed off and can come back and beat Michigan, which they can do. Like, Michigan is probably playing some of the best football in all of college football, but I would not put it out of question that Georgia can go in there and beat Michigan. So I think the committee was trying to say, okay, let's set up a potential championship game with a SEC championship game. Because if you put Alabama at number 2, then that game is going to be played in the first college football championship game, and you're not going to get that later on. So I think that's potentially what their thinking was going into it. You're not wrong with why Michigan should be number 1,
Sure.
But Alabama just dominated, which people thought. So I'm okay with where the rankings are, and I'm also banking that Alabama and Georgia play again in the championship game, and Georgia gets a chance for a rematch. That's kind of my thinking right there.
I get what you're saying. That maybe the committee was like, okay, Michigan and Alabama are so close that it's like might as well just not have a rematch. I get that, but I think we've been harping here on the Cover 2 podcast that the way the college football ranking should be is literally just based on who you've beaten and based on who you've lost to and based on the way the games went. And I feel like that in that case, it should be Michigan, the top team, and Alabama and Georgia 2-3, and then Cincinnati number 4. To just echo my point a little bit more, and it's tough because I don't have all these things on the screen at once. When you actually go back and look at the schedules of the teams that we're talking about here in the top 3, right, and even the top 4, realistically, Alabama, like the SEC, ended up not being as good as we thought it was this year. Like, there's a lot of teams when you look at these rankings. Let me get back to it really quickly. So when I look at the rankings right now, this is how many SEC teams are, in the top 15. And that's
Three.
No, it's just Georgia and Alabama. Ole Miss, excuse me.
No, Ole Miss number 9.
Ole Miss, very good team too. I do not want to disrespect Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss could have even been higher a little bit in these rankings. But you go down a little further. You got Kentucky and Arkansas and Texas A&M kind of rounding out the end of the spectrum there at the college football. In the college football playoff. I think you might see a little bit of SEC bias in there with a couple 3-4 lost teams in there. I think that, again, you're juicing up the schedule for the SEC that I thought ended up being not that good. It does help. It does help Georgia because Georgia did kind of destroy Arkansas and destroy Kentucky and all that stuff. But when you actually go back and look at Georgia's schedule, like, they were so dominant, right? They were so dominant. They win 10-3 versus Clemson. Clemson ended up being not that bad this year, but Clemson was like whatever, like they could barely beat Syracuse and were really struggling against a lot of teams this year. They beat up on Arkansas. Okay. Arkansas ended up being not as good as we thought. They weren't number 8, right? They beat up on Auburn. Auburn was 5-6 loss team this year. Kentucky. Yeah, they ended up kind of finishing off the season good, but again, not number 11. They beat up on Florida. Florida was terrible this year. And then they beat all the other SEC teams, and they end up losing to Alabama. When you actually look at like their strength of schedule, I think it was like 60 or something crazy. Not 60. I don't think it was 60. I think that was Cincinnati. But it was like 30 or 40. Like, it wasn't that great. And even when you look at Alabama's record, let me get to them really quickly, and who they ended up beating and who those teams are now today. Big win against Miami. I mean, Miami is literally a joke. Close win against Florida. Florida was a joke this year. Big win against Ole Miss. That's the most impressive thing they did besides beat Georgia. That really is what helps. But then they go and they lose the next week. Mississippi State, Tennessee, LSU, New Mexico State, close loss to Auburn, close win to Auburn, close win to Arkansas, who Georgia destroyed, and then they get the win against Georgia. Then you look at what Michigan did, and, Michigan, they play a different style of football, so there's not going to be as many blowouts, but the way they finished their season, destroying Ohio State, who is still ranked what? What are they ranked? Number 6 right now? And destroying Iowa, who's ranked probably, what's their ranking? How far did they drop after, number 15. So technically, Michigan has more valuable wins and near the end of the season than Alabama and Georgia did. I get a lot of those teams are ranked near the end, but I think that might be a little SEC bias. And again, guys, I'm not going on the fact that the rankings is much here. I'm going on the fact that these teams actually beat. And Alabama struggled against a lot of those teams, and they get one big win against Georgia, and then they're put as number 1 when we were talking about them barely making the playoff the week before. And Georgia, when you actually look at their schedule and who they beat, their schedule wasn't that hard. And then they lose to to Alabama, their toughest opponent, by 17. They're easily toughest opponent by 17. So I think when you look at it, I think the best team is Michigan. I look at the best team as Michigan. They if they don't just flop that game against Michigan State and let them come back, they're easy 13-0. We're not even having a discussion. I think you look at that loss, you look what happened in that game, throw it out the door a little bit, and you look at the losses that Georgia and Alabama had, not even as impressive. Even the Michigan loss is more explained than the other ones. So that's why.
Well, hey,
when you retroactively look at it and look at who everybody beat and how they beat them, I still think Michigan, with the way they ended their season, they got to be number one. I think they're the best team.
Well, hey, listen. If Michigan is that good, and you're not wrong, and you're that good, then they should go in and beat Georgia.
Damn right.
Like, take care of business. Beat Georgia then. If Michigan is that good, we want to go through their schedules throughout all the year and say how tough their opponents were and all this stuff. And yeah, Michigan should be Michigan State, whatever. If Michigan's that good, go out and beat Georgia and get to the national championship game. More than likely against Alabama. Like, you know what I mean? Run the football, play your great defense, do what you do. If you're that good, go beat Georgia. Because obviously we've seen that Georgia has some kinks and that they are, they're not invincible. They can be beat. So take a page out of Alabama's book, do what they did. I don't know if they can because they play a different style of ball, but go out and beat Georgia then. It's that simple.
Yeah, no, they have to, right? They have to. And that's why you play the games, right? I would rather see Michigan get the chance to play a little easier team to get themselves into the college football playoff national championship final game than have to go through freaking Georgia and then have to go through Alabama, or if somehow Cincinnati beats Alabama, Cincinnati, and it's like the national championship game is like their second hardest game in a row, where now Alabama gets to, I think we both agree, Jared, most likely cruise their way through the college football playoff semifinal and get a way, way easier opponent. I think Michigan ends up getting punished here for no reason. And that's where I get that they don't want to see Alabama, Georgia again. I do. Like, I would love to see them play again.
Hell yeah.
I would love to see them play again. So I don't necessarily need it to be in the national championship. I would love to see it as soon as possible on December 31st, New Year's Eve. That's another, that's a holiday, right? Let's put it there. So yeah, I think I look at it as like Michigan kind of got punished. They now have to play Georgia in a the Western Conference Finals, essentially, instead of playing them in the NBA Finals or the Stanley Cup Finals or the World Series, right? They have to play them in the championship series. They're like it's unfair. And I thought that Michigan didn't do anything wrong and actually did what every college football person says you're supposed to do, is finish your year strong, finish your year hot. And they did that. Alabama did that too.
No doubt.
But they also looked like complete trash the week before. So, come on. Michigan hasn't looked like trash most of the season. And they look like trash, I guess, in the fourth quarter against Michigan State. And that's really it. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Jared, let's get into what we think is actually going to happen in these games. We'll do a tiny little preview because we most likely maybe 2 weeks from now we're going to have an official college football preview, because I don't think we're going to have maybe we'll have a Christmas week podcast now that I think about it, because Christmas is on Saturday. So maybe we'll wait a little longer. But yeah, about 2 weeks now we'll have official preview for these games on December 31st. But Jared,
we'll see.
Let's start. Okay, let me get these lines really quickly up because we need to get,
It's not good for Cincinnati, I can tell you that.
The betting code. That's why I'm trying to.
Good for Cincinnati.
Yeah, let's
13 and a half.
Okay, that's
not a lot of respect.
Yeah, that's not that bad to me, to be honest. That's not too off with what I think that score is going to be. But let me just get down these games. I don't use a mouse during these podcasts, so I gotta, slowly get all the way down to this thing. I'm on December 30th.
You're
all right,
slumming it over here. Don't
December
worry.
31st. All right. So we got Alabama, Cincinnati, like you said, AT&T Stadium. That's the home of the Cowboys. Alabama 13.5-point favorite. And then we have Georgia and Michigan at Hard Rock Stadium where the Dolphins play. Georgia is a 7.5-point favorite. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. All right, we'll talk about that second because let's talk about that now that I've seen the line. That's 2 versus 3. So, Jared, let's start with Cincinnati, Alabama. How does Cincinnati beat Alabama? That's the question. Alabama does lose John Mechie. Torn ACL. They lose their number 1 wide receiver, Jerry. We saw when Alabama was a little beat up against Auburn that they struggled when they didn't have all their guys. So how do you think Cincinnati can win here? They're obviously an AAC team, a non-Power 5 team. They are playing a team that just beat Georgia. Like you're going into this game, Nick Saban, like all this stuff. Alabama does lose their number 1 wide receiver, but how does Cincinnati win this game, let alone even cover that spread?
Desmond Ridder has to basically play like a Heisman winning quarterback. There's one that's it. It's simply that, right? He's got to play lights out against an Alabama defense that has shown up to play, later down the stretch. Because the first month of the season, Alabama's defense was a little suspect, and I think Nick Saban has finally kind of really put his clamps on this team, and groove. Even that game against Auburn, where Alabama had only scored 3 points, their defense is the one that kept them in the game, right? And obviously, beating Georgia by 17 points, you can say that the defense had a lot to do with that as well. So for me, this is all about Desmond Ridder, right? And showing that, yes, I play at Cincinnati. I don't play in a Power 5, but I deserve to be recognized as one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. This game is simply on him. This is the biggest game of his life, right? It really is, because without Ridder, he threw for 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions this year. He is the reason why this team is where they are. If they have another quarterback there, I'm not so sure that this offense is able to click like they do, right? They average 39 points a game, so pretty close to 40, over 4 yards of offense a game. And that is mainly because of Ridder. So I simply think that it's there's not like rocket science to this to me. It's Ridder against the Alabama Crimson Tide defense. Simply put, if he has to play lights out, not turn the ball over at all. Like, it's okay to punt, right? Like you're putting the ball back into Alabama's and their hands from an offensive perspective, but it's okay to punt. You cannot turn the ball over, period. It's check down, punt, live to fight another day. They turn the ball over even once, they cannot have any turnovers. Because if they do, Alabama will take advantage and it will not be a game anymore. So 0 turnovers from Ridder, and he's got to play lights out. That is the simple recipe for success. I'm not so sure if there's any other way. Like, Ridder cannot have a bad game and make mistakes and think that Cincinnati is going to win. They don't have the talent. They don't have the playmakers. They don't have the 4- and 5-star recruits to make mistakes and come back from that. Like, you always say that's why they play the game, and never say never. That's true. But maybe if Cincinnati was like in the Power 5, right? If this was another Power 5 team, then maybe I would have a little more faith in the rest of the team. But because they don't have those 4- and 5-star recruits, this is really on Ridder, simply put.
Yeah, it's Desmond Ridder is their guy. I was looking at the stats a second ago, and I'll pull them back up again really quickly. But this team's 13-0, okay? And every single week, Jared Smith, and especially the last couple weeks, we've been saying that this team probably shouldn't be here, okay? And then when you look at the stats against the technical number 1 team, you guys know I disagree with that, but here's what it looks like, okay? Yards passing and yards rushing for Cincinnati. Yards passing is about 250 a game. Yards rushing about 180. That's really impressive. Okay. Passing yards allowed, 168, very impressive. Rushing yards allowed, 137, not. Okay. That's tough. You look at Alabama, again, a little tougher opponents, right? Definitely more tougher than Cincinnati. Yards passing, 347. That's very good. Yards rushing, 147. Yeah, pretty good. And then here's where it really gets kind of crazy. Yards passing allowed, 223 a game from Alabama. Little surprising there. But yards rushing, like, they need to be able to find a way to run the ball somehow on this Alabama team that I would assume is number one against the run. Looking at these
Well,
stats.
that's why your argument plays right into my hands of what I was saying. That's simply why Ritter has to have a better game, because
Right.
they're not going to be able to run the football. Like, he's going to have to throw the ball 40 to 45 times. That's what I'm saying. The game is on his shoulders, whether you want to think it or not. And I'm not saying you're not. I'm simply saying, yes, they probably will not have the success of running the football and gaining. They might get 100 yards, right? If they're kind of stick with it, even if it's not going there. But they're not going to get 180 or whatever they're averaging on the season, which is why, like I said, Ritter is going to have to play the game of his life. He's going to have to throw for 4 touchdowns. He's going to have to throw for over 300 yards. And like I said, he cannot make a mistake and turn the ball over.
Yeah, no,
I
get
away.
Yeah, it's going to be you're right. Desmond Ritter doesn't need to do it. I'm just saying Cincinnati does need to find a way. You still need to be able to run the ball. You need to be able to run the ball. And whether that means, just running the ball, getting a couple yards here so you can pass. But if Alabama does not respect you at all, which it seems like they haven't respected anybody this year, including Georgia, running the ball, because they just, they're able to stop the run. They don't care that you're gonna, like, that you are a good passer. Like, there's so many plays a quarterback can make if you can't run the ball, right? And we know Alabama is going to score because Bryce Young is having, the best games of his life right now. So I still think Luke Fickell needs to find a way to run the ball, creative play calling, whatever you need to do. You need to find a way to win the ball, and you need to create turnovers on defense if you're Cincinnati as well. When I look at the one game that's comparable to this game, the game against Notre Dame, right? Offensively, Desmond Ritter threw for about 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, right? Very, very good stats there. And they ran for nearly 100 yards on the ground. Not quite, but they'll need to do a little bit better than that, to be honest. And then on defense, they forced a Notre Dame fumble, and they also got 2 interceptions. That's 3 turnovers. So, yeah, I think Cincinnati they're gonna have to not turn over the ball, right, at all, like you mentioned, and they're gonna need to force some turnovers. And obviously there's some game tape you can figure out with Bryce Young that they will be able to turn over the ball. You need to be punching that ball out on the Alabama runners, and DBs need to make a play too. But yeah, a lot Cincinnati needs to do. I don't really think it's possible, Jared Smith, that they can win this game. But, like, I guess if you're able to shock the system and run the ball somehow against Alabama, it's a lot easier. And if you're able to turn the ball over, it's going to be a close game, and you just got to be able to make those plays. Got to be able to make the plays. But yeah, it's going to be tough. I got Alabama winning by 17 in this game. Much like
Alabama's winning by double digits. I mean, we've spent long enough talking about this game. Like, it's a college football matchup, and so it deserves to have its due. But Alabama should win this game by double digits. It should not be that hard for Alabama, to play their style of play, whether they want to run the ball or throw the football, and win this game. It really shouldn't, especially coming off of a big win against Georgia. They come back with that crazy win in the Iron Bowl against their arch rival, right, in Auburn. So I think Alabama's riding high right now. That Coach Saban isn't going to let them just slide because it's Cincinnati, right? Like, obviously Cincinnati has made it for a reason. And so, yeah, Alabama's going to come out, do what they do, dominate, probably play like they did against Georgia, and they're going to cruise to the championship game. And then they're going to I believe that's the first game. So they're going to sit back, put their feet up, and watch the Georgia-Michigan game and wait and see who they play. It really should not be that tough for Alabama. No offense, Cincinnati. Congratulations for going undefeated. Congratulations for being the first non-Power 5 conference to ever get into the college football playoff. But I believe your life expectancy will be pretty short-lived, unfortunately, because you're just going up against a juggernaut. I think if they were playing Michigan, they might have a little bit more of a chance, because I don't know if Michigan is as talented as Alabama. Michigan is playing the best football right now. I'll say that. But unfortunately, Cincinnati just got the wrong end of the stick, and they got to go up against Alabama and Nick Saban. So tough sled, but like I said, it should be Alabama, and we should be moving on.
Yeah, well, let's move on, Jared. Georgia, Michigan in the late game that night in Miami. It'd be interesting weather for that game, right? It'd be Georgia weather for a Michigan game. So again, I'll start with this. 2 questions. One, what do you think about Georgia being favored by 7.5 in this game? And 2, what do you think about Georgia's quarterback situation right now? This has been a little hot topic since the games happened, and the other quarterback's name has been trending. We know him well, local guy, played my brother in high school football. We mentioned him with Lincoln Riley and all this stuff as a guy that left the state of California to go to the East Coast, literally left USC. His name's been trending, really. So first, give me the reason why Georgia's favored so much, whether you agree with it, and give me who you think or what do you think about the quarterback situation at Georgia.
Look, someone on the committee, the 13-person committee, has to be from the state of Georgia or has to be an alumni of the Georgia Bulldogs. Because it's not that I'm surprised that Georgia is favored. It's by how much. Like, Georgia should be favored by like maybe 2.5.
Yeah.
When you lose by double digits, right, in your previous game, albeit to an Alabama squad that's playing very well right now, like, I don't know how you can come back and all of a sudden just have that type of faith. At least in the beginning. Now, it's still Monday. It's early in the week, and I guarantee that line will change as we get, But like, if Georgia is to be favored, it is by no more than 2.5. And to me, that's just some disrespect to Michigan, right? Like, you've already hyped up and talked about how well Michigan has played this year, how they had some early bumps in the road, but they've been able to, get over that. And this is probably the best football team they've had in the John Harbaugh era, right? He's done a fantastic job this year. All the things about Michigan. If anything, Michigan should have came out as either the early favorite or Georgia, like I said, in an early lead by, like I said, 2.5. The fact that they're up by 7, I'm a little curious about that one. As far as the quarterback play goes, that is maybe the one and only question mark on this team. Like, yes, I know that they just gave up a lot of points to Alabama, but I think overall this Georgia team is still number 1 in the country. If you were asking me to pick any defense in the country, I'm going to say Georgia because of how dominant they are at all 3 levels, the defensive line, linebacker, and secondary spots. And so to me, I think they're going to be pissed off. They're going to be hungry. They're going to come out, do best. They stop the run and they get to the quarterback. What does Michigan do best? They run the football. This is going to be an old school smash mouth, like buckle up both chin straps type of game. You're going to see some passing, probably more so from Georgia. But when Michigan's on the field, they want to run the football. They want to establish that identity. We're going to line up in a running formation. You're going to know we're running the ball, and we're still going to try and do it, right? Like, they don't have to do all this fancy motion, which they do sometimes anyway. But it's like they want to play smash mouth football. And that's exactly what Georgia is great at defending. So if you love old school smash mouth running type of football, this, I think, is the game from you, at least from a Michigan offense, Georgia defensive perspective. I must not be entertaining you because you're yawning a little bit. So I'm just messing with you. But in the end, I think this is really going to come down to Georgia's defense and Michigan's offense. I think Georgia's offense will be able to score points on Michigan's defense. No offense to Michigan's defense. I think they have played well throughout the season, but I think they played a little above their expectations. I'm not so sure as they've played in the last, second half of the season. I think Georgia will be able to put up points. The real question to me is, can Michigan put up points on Georgia's defense, right? That'll be the real question. Do you think they can?
Yeah, I mean, because I know Ohio State's defense isn't as good, but, again, I almost look at it, and it's unfortunate these games aren't played in like a week, or they're not played in like even 2 weeks, like a Super Bowl would be. the momentum for Michigan, I think it's going to be tough to keep that going for another month. I mean, literally, what's the date today? December, what is it, 6th?
6th.
Yeah, and so that's 25 days away till this game's being played. We don't see that in any other football, scenario. Even from the college football playoff to the national championship is like 10, 11 days. The Super Bowl is about 14 days. And so this is so long that you do, Jared, have to look at like the momentum of Michigan's run these last couple weeks is out. And it's another reason why Michigan should be number one, because they're just getting punished for doing nothing wrong. And it's so irritating, right? Alabama's in the national championship, and it's annoying. But let me get back to this game. I do think it will be tough to score against Georgia's defense, but I think it's going to be tough for Georgia to score against Michigan's defense too. So it just comes down to kind of like making the stops if you're Michigan on the big plays and trying to score touchdowns instead of field goals, right? Or at least just trying to score in general, like not punting as much. And I know that's obvious, but just even getting to like the 30-yard line, 35-yard line for long field goal attempts is going to be big against this Georgia team, because I do think, Michigan's going to look at that tape of the Alabama-Georgia game and go, okay, well, so if Stetson Bennett is the quarterback for this game, there's holes here. We can figure out how to stop this guy, and as long as we stop the run and we make this dude pass, it's a little easier to stop this team than everybody thought, right? And that goes to them, Jared, back to their schedules just not being that hard this year and them dominating a lot of teams that just aren't that good, And so once they actually play a legitimate team, you look at that tape. So I think, and this is why I posed the question, I think it's how is Stetson Bennett going to recover from that Alabama game? Because I think Alabama and Michigan's defense is pretty similar, realistically, when you go look at this game. I think JT Daniels needs to play in the semifinal. Like, I think at worst, if Stetson Bennett starts and has a bad start to this game, JT Daniels needs to play. I would just start him outright because JT Daniels is not a bad quarterback, but I think there needs to be a very, very short leash on Stetson Bennett, because I'm guaranteeing Michigan's looking at the tape right now as we speak, going, oh, we can do this, we can do that. Oh, if we this guy just isn't as good as everyone thought he was. So that's my take on it. I know you have a question.
What's a short leash? What's a short leash? Like,
first,
is it a couple series? Is it a quarter? Like, this game is win or go home. So what is a short leash? It's not like, oh, we're evaluating a guy and we've got a couple weeks to make a decision, or a couple games. You got one game. So how we know? Yeah. Tell me if he has a bad start, when do you yank him?
Two series. 2 series. Yeah. I'm giving him 2 series.
I mean,
if he messes up the first 2 series and Michigan is scoring,
that's a short leash.
Oh yeah. Well, Jared, I think JT Daniels should just start. I'm giving him a real short leash. And it's because of that do or die. Like, I compare it a little bit to baseball, right? You got a starting pitcher that, like, you're not super confident about starting the game, and you're like, okay, man, you better pitch pretty well, and we'll do our best to score behind you, but you're on a short leash. I think it's the same thing with this. It's win or go home. You win this game, and it's not going to be easier in the final, realistically, but it's like it might be, right? And you have another 10 days to prepare for the next game. So you need to win this one. It's game 7 to get to the World Series. It's game 7 to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's game 7 to get to the NBA Finals, right? And you just need to figure out a way to win. And whether that means switching quarterbacks like we've seen in the national championship before, right? You need to figure out a way to do it. And it's been successful in both of those stories too. I don't see a reason why you can't do it. I think Michigan's good with their guys, right? But with Georgia, because of what happened last week against Alabama, I think Stetson Bennett needs to be on a short leash, and I think if you're Michigan, try to get him out of there. You know, if you can take
So
advantage in your Michigan and get 10 points or 14 points or something like that right off the bat, that's going to help you obviously.
So I think that's an interesting dynamic, and let's just take it from the perspective, like if you're Kirby Smart, the Georgia head coach, right, and you're thinking, Nick, that Stetson Bennett's going to be on a short leash and JT Daniels should be ready to go. Obviously, you always want your backup ready to go. So JT Daniels should be preparing like he is the starter. But if you're Kirby Smart, do you go to Stetson Bennett and say, "Hey, man, like pressure is on, like know the pressure and the magnitude of this game, but do you go to him and literally say, hey, if you don't play well in the first couple series, I'm yanking you? Because to me, I think that's even putting more pressure on him, and I think that could actually backfire. So I think if I'm Kirby Smart in my head and to my coaching staff, I'm telling them, hey, listen, this is what we are prepared to do if Bennett doesn't play well. But I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to go and tell Bennett that. Maybe I drop some hints in practice, like competition at every position. I mean, whatever you want to say, but I think that's an interesting dynamic, and I think that could actually mess up Bennett's head and his psychological makeup. If these are still college athletes, like they're still young men, right? It's not like they're professionals getting paid, right? I think that's an interesting dynamic, and I don't know what you really do in that situation because, like I said, some kids, some guys, you tell them that type of thing, and put more pressure, and they might fold. So I'm not saying that he will. I'm just saying I think there's a possibility, and you got to be real careful about how you talk to your players and about how you manage that situation if you're of the mindset of a Nick Nenad.
Jared, here's what I would do if I'm Kirby Smart. I wouldn't say a damn word to Stetson Bennett. I wouldn't say a word. I'd be like, you're the starter. Get in there. You've been a starter every game. And then I wouldn't say anything to JT. And you know why you don't need to say anything to JT? Because JT, as a freshman in high school, went in there and beat some of the best high school football teams in the nation. This dude's been a prodigy from the beginning of his life. Okay, in football, 6th, 7th grade, he was a star, right? He was with the best quarterback coaches, all that stuff. This dude, you put him in that game, and with what they've done to him and what's happened in his career already, leaving USC, getting a couple quarterbacks taken over him, JT's gonna play. JT's gonna ball out and win that game.
Are you serious?
Absolutely, I'm serious.
That's your argument right now. You're comparing.
Okay.
You right now.
Yes.
You just disrespected Michigan by saying that. You know that, right? This is not just another game.
No.
This is not high school. This is not junior high. I get it. JT Daniel was great at modern day, and then he started his career off at USC and all that stuff. Good. No, this is Michigan, man. You just hyped at Michigan more than anyone, especially on this show. And now you're saying, oh, JT Daniel's just going to simply walk in cold after 3 or 4 series somewhere in the first or second quarter and just come in and light it up like that because he's done it before in high school. Man, this ain't high school.
Jared.
This is college. This is the mini pros.
Stetson Bennett goes to JT Daniels after the series. After he gets on the field, he goes to JT Daniels to discuss things. Why is he going to JT to talk things? Because JT knows more stuff. Stetson Bennett was the hotter hand. Georgia has 2 great quarterbacks, okay? And JT is the better quarterback still, okay? Stetson Bennett, he played a little easier schedule. He didn't have to play Clemson in the first game after COVID, right? Like come on. So JT was throwing the fire, had a tough first game. Stetson Bennett's gone, took in the reins, and that's what's happened. But now Stetson plays really bad. All the Georgia fans, are going crazy. They want JT to play. You put JT in, he's still that 5-star quarterback, and I don't think he needs to worry or I don't think you need to tell Stetson Bennett anything. I think you just need maybe get a little hint to JT, be like, hey, it might be your time on Saturday. Let him know. Maybe give him a little hint.
You're walking a fine line, man. You're walking a fine line. I'm telling you, you mess with some of these kids' mental makeup, and I mean, like I said, I think what you said in the beginning of potentially just not saying anything and saying, listen, everyone needs to be ready to play. I think that's the more like political correctly thing to say. But if you come out, and have a one-on-one meeting with these guys individually and say, hey, you're on a short leash, I think I don't know, man. Some guys may take that and they can rise above the pressure, right? And I'm not saying that Stenson can't, because obviously there's a reason he was recruited to Georgia. There's a reason that he's played well so far. So he deserves his credit. I'm just saying, you got to be careful with how you talk to some of these athletes, especially in a big game like this where they already have that pressure on them. If you're going to stack more blocks on top of their shoulders and add more pressure, just saying, sometimes it backfires. You got to be careful.
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't say anything to Stetson. But all I'm saying is when I'm watching that Alabama game, the Alabama-Georgia game, and Stetson Bennett's not playing well, he's going off and talking to JT about what he did wrong. Again, Stetson Bennett is the guy that was put in there, and he's just played great. Played great. But he didn't play great. And now this is college football. This isn't the NFL, right? Your backup isn't whatever, Ben DiNucci or whatever, whoever it is. It's, you got another Dak Prescott sitting there, right, as your backup. It's okay. It's going to play that guy. Excuse me. Still recovering from being a little sick last week. So, Jerry, who do you have winning this game? After all that, who do you have winning this game? Just quickly, we'll get more in depth about it when we know the injuries and all that stuff and who's playing in the game in a couple weeks. But who do you think wins this game? Just give me a winner.
All signs are really pointed to Michigan right now, right? They're playing the best ball. I've already said that. One loss on the record that was midway through the year. They beat up on Ohio State, their rival. They beat Iowa in the Big Ten championship. They're coming in super hot. We just debated they could potentially be the number one team ahead of Alabama right now. They're riding high, right? Coach Harbaugh finally gets his first win, against Ohio State, finally gets his team into the college football championship, all that thing, right? I'm still, as of today, right, and we are still 3 weeks away, 25 days, like you said, I have to lean towards Georgia. And it's very close. I could be swayed back and forth. As of right now, I still think it's Georgia. Why? Because I think they're going to come out with a pissed off attitude. What an embarrassing loss against Alabama. Not only do you lose to an SEC rival, you lose by double digits when you were the, undefeated, no question about it, number one team in the country. Everyone was talking about your defense as one of the best defenses in college football history, and you come out and you give up a bunch of points to an Alabama team. So to me, I think this Georgia team is going to come out on a mission, and if they play up to their talent level, Georgia should beat Michigan. So early, diagnosis is Georgia by a field goal, but that could change. Subject to change.
Jared, I agree with you. The higher team right now is Michigan, but like I mentioned, it is 25 days until this game. That is 3.5 weeks. It's almost a month. That will wear off. And then you're looking at what the season was and who the better team looks to be, and that's Georgia. So I do agree with you. I think Georgia does pull this game out. I do see it being close. I don't like that line of 7.5. I do think Georgia wins the game. But yeah, I'll go Georgia by 5 just to be a little different from you, but I could see Georgia by 3 as well. But yeah, I think Georgia wins, and I think JT Daniels is the winning quarterback of this game. That's all I'm going to say. And then he's the quarterback of the national championship.
Won't be mad.
And he plays the dude that was under him at Modern Day in the national championship. That's what I want to see. All right, Jared, let's get to the NFL. Like you said, we're less than an hour away from Monday Night Football. We will not be talking about that game, Bills-Patriots. You can go to our last podcast before this if you want to just see who we predicted, who we thought would win, all that stuff. But might be a little too late for that now since it's Tuesday at the earliest for you guys. But, Jerry, we had big news. Big Ben Roethlisberger. The rumor is that he's telling teammates excuse me. He's telling teammates that he is going to retire at the end of this season. Jay, we've talked a lot about in this podcast about what we think about Big Ben, even from last year, what we think about him physically, what we think he's doing to this Pittsburgh Steelers team. What was your first thoughts when we're hearing these rumors that Big Ben is telling people he is done? after the season. What was your first thoughts?
He's about 2 years too late. Like Big Ben should have retired so damn long ago. It's really not even funny. I mean, if I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I'm sorry to say this, but like Big Ben is the reason why this team has been held back. The defense has played well enough. You have one of the best coaching staffs led by Mike Tomlin, right? One of the best coaches in all the NFL. You have a great organizational staff from top to bottom, from ownership to leadership to coaching to all that. Big Ben is the main reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers have been held back, why they have not been dominating the AFC North like they have in the past, why they have not, made a real run in the playoffs in years. It's because of Big Ben. Listen, Father Time is undefeated, and Big Ben, Father Time hit him years ago. And I think, Pittsburgh, something that's kind of like a double-edged sword, they have so much loyalty, right? Which is one of the reasons from a coaching standpoint why I believe they in their entire history, they lead the league, or they're very close with like the least amount of head coaches, right? They don't just make sudden changes. They don't have one losing season or one bad game, and all of a sudden everyone jumps ship, right? They tend to stick with their guys and ride things out. And I think their loyalty to Big Ben after winning 2 Super Bowls is very, very high, which I understand. But this is also a business. And I think from a business standpoint, Pittsburgh has made the wrong decision in keeping Big Ben as their quarterback and holding this franchise back. Now, obviously, injuries are part of the game, and there's a host of other reasons why Pittsburgh is also not won. But I think if they were to have another franchise quarterback, if they would have, in the last 2 drafts, really taken a hard look at one of these quarterbacks in the draft and been in that quarterback market, not saying that they could potentially be in a better position right now today, but for their future, yes, no doubt. Because after looking just a quick glance at the top of quarterbacks coming out this year, none of them compare to what the rookie quarterbacks of this past draft were, or even the draft before that. And so when I look at Pittsburgh's future, I see a great organization from a leadership standpoint. I see a great coach, and I see a good to great defense. Who their next quarterback will be, because I don't think it's Mason Rudolph, who's been there for 2 or 3 years now. And I'm not really sure who would really take over the reins. So, back as Big Ben has been, it's time for him to go. And like I said, I think he is 2 years too late. One last thing before I hand it to you. Bill Belichick said one of the best quotes, and something that always sticks with me as far as when it comes to players and that like personal relationship to business relationship, right? He said, I would rather let a player go a year early rather than let a player go 1 or 2 years late, right? So sometimes you see Bill Belichick make random decisions, player gets let go, and it's like, wow, like that was a star player. He's still got time, you know what I mean? He can still play all these things. He'd rather let a guy go early and replace him than keep him on for too long, which is exactly what Pittsburgh has done. Their loyalty is kind of blinding them a little bit.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think they should have made the hard decision, not easy, but the tough decision to say, you know what, Big Ben, it's nothing personal. It's all business. We love you. Appreciate the 2 Super Bowls. You're going to be in our Ring of Honor. Anytime you want to come, you got a suite with us, all that jazz, right? All that. But he should not be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is just not the quarterback that he used to be. He's not a top 10 quarterback. I don't even think he's the top 15 quarterback anymore. He's simply holding his team back.
Yeah, Jared. I mean, I can't even disagree with you, like, almost on everything you said there. And again, it's supposed to be a debate podcast, but I think this is one of those times where we're going to throw the debate out the door. It's Big Ben. They get that big win against the Baltimore Ravens this week. I think that's more the Ravens on the Ravens. And again, I mean, freaking Lamar throws the ball like 1 inch a little bit to the left, and the Steelers lose, right? And it's going for 2 and all that stuff, and I get it, but the Steelers lose. Right, and we're really talking about the end of the Big Ben era. That they get this win, so now we got to act like Big Ben's sort of good. No, dude can't bend down for a snap. The reason their play calling is so bad is because of Big Ben. It's like, Jared, when you have a company you're running, right? And let's say you kind of let your employees do whatever they want. Right. It's a small company. It's got about 20, 30 employees. Right. Couple of them drink on the job, right? A couple of them kind of they're not respectful of their boss, and the boss is kind of a pushover, right? And then rules start to change, right? Okay, you guys can't have drinks on the job, you can't do all this, like, and then the company kind of falls apart because you're not following like the good practices that a good company, a company that's run good, does, right? I think with the Steelers, unfortunately, everything besides their defense offensively is now messed up because they've allowed Big Ben to mess it up. And it was the running game last year. They draft Najee Harris, and now it's like it got a little bit better, but the play calling is still so bad. So yeah, I agree with that. Big Ben, he's done, man, and he was done 2-3 years ago. And Pittsburgh needed to draft a quarterback these last couple of years. There's not really a star quarterback that you can get this year, so I don't know what you do next year. If you're Pittsburgh, maybe you go for like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, maybe, or something like that next year, if he strays away from Washington somehow, as it looks like Washington's probably going to stick with Heineke for a little bit. Maybe you do that for 1 year and then you draft the guy the next year and just figure it out, trade up, do all that stuff. But yeah, I think that Big Ben has left a horrible stain on the Steelers the last couple of years that has turned them from potentially being a Super Bowl contender with that good of a defense into just really a not very good team. They're a poor man's Broncos, and the Broncos ain't even that good. You know, like with their play calling and stuff. Like the Broncos have hampered themselves because they picked the wrong quarterback, which is fine. That happens. I'm not going to blame Elway for picking Drew Lock. You know, it's just the way it goes. But now they have Teddy, and like, yeah, with that defense they can win some games, but you're not going to win the Super Bowl. After watching that Sunday Night Football game last Sunday, you're not winning the Super Bowl with that team. You know, Teddy can't do it. Can't do it that many games in the playoffs. So yeah, Big Ben's messed it up, and it's kind of sad.
I'll say, I want to say this because we're on the topic of obviously Big Ben, but not just Big Ben, but quarterbacks in general, right? And I mentioned it, you mentioned it about how, Pittsburgh, we both think that in the last couple of drafts they should have addressed the quarterback position with more urgency, and they haven't. And we've seen that from a lot of teams. And to me, it doesn't make sense, right? Like I'll even go back to this last year's draft. The Atlanta Falcons, they have the number 4 pick in the draft, right? They end up taking Kyle Pitts, who is arguably the best athlete, best talent in the entire draft, right? He's amazing. He's a tight end, but he's really a receiver. He can line up anywhere. He makes all these fantastic catches. He's reliable, all this stuff. When was the last time that a tight end won a team a Super Bowl for a year? It has never happened before.
Yeah, no. And then maybe in the 1940s.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't happen. Like, I get they still have Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan is a shell of himself. He has proven that this year that he, once again, Father Time has caught up to him. Now, maybe he's playing a little better than Big Ben. Maybe he can still throw the ball a little bit farther, but he's still not what Matt Ryan was 3, 4, 5 years ago in his prime. The Detroit Lions, I believe they have like the number, I don't know, they have number 3, 4, 5, something like that, right? They took Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle from Oregon. They, too, traded away Matthew Stafford, got back Jared Goff in return. But is Jared Goff really your franchise quarterback of the future? I don't know. What I'm getting at, because I can go on and on and on about this, every single year we see this happening. Why teams that need a quarterback or that have an aging quarterback that in the next year or two are going to need to retool, why they do not take a harder look at the current crop of quarterbacks coming out in the draft and take one. Like this past year, there was 5 or 6 legitimate quarterbacks that went in the first round that had the potential to be great. We saw Denver pass them up. Denver took Patrick Surtain, a great corner from Alabama. Denver needs a quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater is not the guy. Obviously, Drew Lock is not the guy because he got benched. Denver didn't do it. I just talked about how Atlanta didn't do it. Detroit didn't do it. Pittsburgh didn't do it. Like, it baffles me. I get it. There are a lot of other great athletes in the draft. Most teams are not going to win a Super Bowl without a great quarterback. Yeah. Off the top of my head, I can remember the 2000 Baltimore Ravens doing it with, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Trent Dilfer.
Yep.
Right? Trent Dilfer is nowhere near a great quarterback. I don't know if we've ever said Trent Dilfer ain't great when it comes to quarterback in the same sentence ever. Like, yes, he had one of the best defenses of all time, and he was a game manager, right? Also for Baltimore, Joe Flacco.
Yeah,
Joe Flacco is not a great quarterback, right? Like, it is so few and far between when an NFL franchise wins a Super Bowl without a top-tier quarterback. That is the number one position that every single team needs to be looking at if you do not have one, or if you have an aging quarterback like the Pittsburgh Steelers do. So, just how I hyped up their organization and the great leadership and everything that they do, they have, in my opinion, made a huge mistake in the last 2 years by not addressing that quarterback position, because they're going to go into this offseason with their hands behind their back saying, what do? We have Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins. And I'm sorry, but nowhere near the talent of quarterbacks in this year's draft that there was the last 2 years. So Pittsburgh is probably going to go through some growing pains in the next couple of years because they have chosen to neglect the quarterback position as far as upgrading the position. They're going to. We've seen it happen with other teams. The Lions, the Broncos, like I said, the list goes on. Pittsburgh is about to be in that category for as great of an organization as they are. Mark my words.
Like I said with the Broncos, with the Broncos, they did pick a quarterback and were wrong. And I'm going to cut a little bit of slack on them because I think they
who?
What? The Broncos?
Who? Drew Lock?
Yeah, no, they picked a quarterback when they needed one, and he just ended up not being that good. Right? They held on.
Exactly. And they knew that. And so they should have went into this draft and got another one. You don't go get Teddy Bridgewater, or maybe you do, but that doesn't stop you from drafting a quarterback. They picked number 9. They were in prime position. I'm sorry, Justin Fields was there and Mac Jones were still there. I know that obviously Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance were gone. But Justin Fields and Mac Jones were still there, and Denver still decided not to. You knew that Drew Lock was not the guy. He had already been there for 2 years, and he had already proven that he wasn't. So I'm sorry, I'm not cutting them any slack. This is not because I don't like the Broncos. This is because they made a poor decision to go for a defender who is a great defender. He's probably going to be an all-pro. He might even make the Hall of Fame one day. Who knows? But he is not going to win that team a championship like a quarterback could. He does not have that type of effect. No player, I don't care how great you are, not Deion Sanders, not anybody, not Aaron Donald, has the type of effect that a quarterback has. They made the wrong decision.
Here's the thing. The reason I'm cutting the Broncos slack a little bit is because this draft that they had, minus you saying them not being a quarterback, was damn good. Like, Patrick Surtain is going to be a beast corner. It's one of the most important positions in football for years. Javonte Williams finally got his starting role last week or last Sunday. He showed out. There's a couple draft picks that they drafted later in the rounds. They're starting for them right now. So, and I also think with Elway at the head that you can go. There's a bunch of quarterbacks that would actually love to play for this team. So maybe they're thinking Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers doesn't work out. You look at some other teams and other quarterbacks that might be a little older that they like. I think the Broncos go, if we can just stack our team around, we don't need the best quarterback. We don't need that future quarterback. And even if we do have to draft a guy in this year's draft, I think we're fine. Yes, I agree with you with Detroit. Like, come on, man. Come on. And I think maybe Miami should have gone out and got a guy too. Like, there's not a better example of picking the right quarterback than my Arizona Cardinals. Okay, and you cannot disagree with this, okay? The Arizona Cardinals, as everybody knows, they went from drafting Josh Rosen to the next year saying Josh Rosen freaking stinks. He sucks. Let's go get that Heisman guy. And now the Cardinals are 10-2 and leading the NFL as 3 years ago, okay? That obviously was a crazy, rash decision, but I think that should have started a trend. I agree with you, Jared. Quarterback is the most important position. And like I said, the only reason I'm cutting some slack for the Broncos is because the rest of their roster is so good and they did draft so well in that draft that you go, okay, maybe they're on to something here. But Detroit.
Question.
Yes, go ahead.
I get, obviously, if they would have taken a quarterback or another player, Patrick Surtain would not be there.
Yeah.
They still could have drafted Javonte Williams, and they still could have drafted the other players in the late third, fourth, fifth rounds. None of that, other than Patrick Surtain, would have hindered them from continuing to have a great draft. Like, I'm sorry, that to me that is it's a bad argument from the standpoint that I'm sorry, but all those players combined, I don't think it can help. But with Teddy Bridgewater and or Drew Lock at the helm, not Patrick Surtain, not Javonte Williams, not any other guy are going to help Denver win a Super Bowl. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. Like, to me, it's not rocket science. Like, yes, you're taking a gamble on a drafting a quarterback coming out of college. That's always a gamble, right? Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning. There was a coin flip on who was going to be better. Obviously, the Colts won that, right? And Ryan Leaf was not. It's always a 50-50 shot. Everyone thought Trevor Lawrence was going to come in and be the guy. Some rookie bumps, just like a lot of other great guys have. What I'm trying to say is there is no excuse. If you are a quarterback-needy team, you not spending a high draft pick on a quarterback because there's some other sexy running back or sexy receiver or sexy corner out there, that is bad operation, in my opinion. You simply don't do it. So what Denver has to hope for now, which could happen, because like you mentioned, they do have some solid pieces as a team, they have to hope that Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay this offseason. They have to hope that Russell Wilson leaves Seattle this offseason. They have to hope that Deshaun Watson's legal issues dry up and nothing comes of that, and Deshaun Watson can get back to playing football. If one of those three scenarios happens, then Denver's in great position. But they are putting a lot of their chips on the table and saying, we're betting on the future. When in my opinion, they should have taken one of these quarterbacks and then find out what they have, and then you can still bet on the future. So I just, like I said, I don't understand not drafting a quarterback when you need one. Most important position in all of football, period, end of story. There should not be an argument about that.
Well, okay, so for some reason we have gone on and just destroyed the Denver Broncos organization.
I know. Listen, I'm sorry. They were the example. They were the example that I wanted to use. I could have used Detroit. I could have used Atlanta. I could have used some other teams, which I did mention. It's just I wanted to use. It has nothing to do. I'm sorry, Alex Silva. I still love you. You can still come on the show. You're amazing. But Denver was a prime example. They were in a prime spot to still get a Justin Fields or a Mac Jones, and they did not. They took Patrick Surtain, who's going to be a great corner, like I said. He's not going to affect the game like a quarterback would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, same boat that Pittsburgh's in. They have a great defense. They have some good offensive pieces. But what are they going to do for the next couple of years? Teddy Bridgewater has shown that he is not the guy. Teddy Bridgewater should not be starting anymore. Drew Lock is too erratic. He makes some good plays. He's got the arm talent, but he is simply not the guy. They're no man's land. What's that old saying? When you have two quarterbacks, you really have none. That's exactly what Denver is going through right now. They have two quarterbacks that they've gone back and forth with, and neither of them are the franchise guy. What are you going to do?
Yeah, no, I think that's why we're telling Pittsburgh you should know better, right? And here's what I was saying. When you look at the teams that didn't draft quarterbacks this year, it's Detroit. Bad ownership. Bad leadership in general, right? It makes sense. Washington. Holy hell, bad ownership, right? Bad leadership in general. With the Denver Broncos, it doesn't make as much sense because they do have good leadership. They do have a good owner, and I think maybe that's why I'm being a little nicer to them. Pittsburgh should know better. What are you doing? You have some of the best owners in the league. You have one of the best head coaches. Why are you letting this old hag control your organization? And that's what Big Ben's done. And I think we need to, get on to the next week's games now because we've talked about this for a long time, but I want to leave it at this. Pittsburgh, you should know better. And you deserve what you're going to get because when you look at all these other teams, Detroit, they finally won a game this week because of their quarterback decision. They won a game. Congratulations.
Clap it up.
Great play. I don't know what the hell the Vikings were doing on that last play, but nonetheless. Washington. Taylor Heinicke is great. Maybe wins one playoff game. No way he gets that team to a Super Bowl. Denver, like we were talking about. Teddy Bridgewater maybe wins a game. No way he goes to the gauntlet and wins 3. No way. And Pittsburgh, you didn't pick a quarterback. You maybe win a game, and that's it. Right? So you get punished, and these teams do not win Super Bowls when they make these decisions. I agree with you. And the only reason I was defending Denver is because I couldn't find a reason why their ownership would allow such stupid decisions.
Oh, okay. Here's another thing, just playing to my point, because we're just gonna. I mean, we've already kind of killed Denver a little bit. We might as well just like smash him and put him in the ground.
Let's put him in the grave. Let's just do it. Yeah.
John Elway is a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
They should know better, right?
Quarterback. Know better. Former Super Bowl winning quarterback. Still will not continue to draft quarterbacks. Their GM was a quarterback, and a great one at that. And then they're sitting here and they're stuck with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. It baffles me. I'm sorry. We need to bring Alex Silva on this show very soon and maybe get a different perspective.
I don't think he's going to want to come on.
He'll come on. We'll make it happen. He's not afraid, which I respect. But he's going to get roasted. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm going to text him right now. I don't know what argument he could really ever come up with to defend Denver's non-drafting of a quarterback. It's other than Drew Lock, right? It didn't work. You know that. Another guy. We got to bring him on. We should move on. Let's go to the next topic. But I'm going to work on getting Alex on either for the next show, or we're going to have to at least get a quote and put it on Twitter.
Sure.
So follow Twitter and keep an eye on, because I'm going to have to get a quote from Alex on this.
Here's the thing, though, Jared. So we mentioned who we mentioned: Washington, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Denver,
Atlanta.
I'm going to throw Atlanta. I'm going to throw Carolina in there. You guys need a QB too.
Do it. There are so many teams.
New Orleans, go.
Yep.
You need to get a quarterback.
Yep.
New Orleans Saints. Everybody, but even Tampa Bay. Go. You guys go get a quarterback. You guys getting old too. No, I'm kidding. It's Tom Brady. You don't need to go get one. But that guy's going to keep playing for years. Just crazy. I love it. I love Jared. Let's get to these games. The next, this coming week, because it is some good ones. We've had a couple dud weeks, Jared Smith, right, for football games. But man, we got some good ones next week. A lot of big division games. We start with Thursday Night Football. Big Ben and the Steelers, right, versus the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe the Minnesota Vikings should be looking at a quarterback in this next year's draft, because Kirk Cousins just keeps. They're 5-7. The Vikings are 5-7. Is that really who you want your franchise quarterback to be? No. Go get a quarterback. Minnesota. Maybe you could do one more year to get better quarterbacks, and maybe you never know, right? You never know with that. But that team seems to be trending down more than up. They looked kind of good this year going into it, but
Mike Zimmer. Zimmer's gone after this year.
Yeah, and he should have been gone.
Bye, Mike Zimmer.
Yeah. So the Steelers 6-5-1 versus the Vikings on Thursday football. That's a pretty good game, though. I'll be tuning into that. And then so here are some of the big-time division games. Ravens-Browns in Cleveland. We love these Ravens-Browns games. They've always been entertaining. Chiefs-Raiders.
And that's an interesting one. That's an interesting one, because the Browns played the Ravens 2 weeks ago, and then the Browns were on a bye this week. And now they play the Ravens again, right? So they got to play them, then have a bye, and then play them.
Baker Mayfield getting a little bit healthy, right?
A lot where
he's getting healthy.
Back-to-back games are against the same teams. That'll be interesting. Ravens also lost Marvin Humphrey, their best corner, to a torn pectoral muscle, so he's out for the year.
They've been so beat up.
Bad news, Bears for the Ravens secondary.
They've been so beat up this year. You got Raiders, Chiefs. This is in Kansas City. Big game there for
Kansas City's hot right now.
Yeah, no, I know. Cowboys, Washington. That's a big game, Jared Smith, because the Cowboys still have not shown me that they're that team I believed in. Okay, and Washington, 5 games in a row.
I can't. Yeah.
So what's going on? Washington is somehow legitimately has a chance to still win this division, Jared. Tell me that that's not going to happen. We'll get to that in a second. minor little one here. You got Falcons and Panthers. It's a division game. It doesn't mean anything for the division, but playoff spot maybe for one of those teams. Although both are just trending like crap last couple weeks. And then you have as well. Well, this is not division, but Bills Buccaneers, and if the Bills were able to win the Monday Night Football game, that game becomes a lot bigger. That's an 8-4 team versus a 9-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's big. And then I think the one everybody's excited about is Cardinals Rams. It actually looks a lot worse because the Rams look a lot worse, and we just seem to be, like I said, the best team in the NFL. So, Jared, I think we're both excited about Cardinals Rams. We'll talk about that near the end, and we're both interested in Cowboys Washington. Out of all those other games, which one are you most interested in to kind of see a specific team or how they play and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I mean, Buccaneers Bills. That to me is the one of the most intriguing games. You're right. Even if the Bills lose tonight on Monday Night Football, and I was watching some of the pregame earlier, like that weather in Buffalo is nuts. They've got like 50-mile-an-hour gusting winds. I mean, if you're a running back or if you play fantasy football and you have any Patriots or any Bills running back, start them because this game might set a record for most runs in a game, right, by both teams just because of weather circumstances. So, even if the Bills do lose this game, I don't think that necessarily makes them a bad team. I think the Patriots are really hot right now and they're playing well. So that Bills Buccaneers game really intrigues me. And the only other one would be the Ravens and Browns, just like I said, because the Browns are playing them back to back, and the Ravens are coming off of that loss where they went for it on 2 and missed. So that's another intriguing early matchup game. But really, like you mentioned, the top two, Cardinals, Rams, Cowboys, Washington, two pivotal, divisional game. Cowboys lead by 2 games in that division, and your Cardinals lead by 2 games in the NFC West. So I believe, let's see, I know the Cardinals and the Rams both won their last games. The Cowboys and Washington both won their games as well. So 4 teams coming in off of wins and some big time matchups.
Yeah, well, I'm glad the Rams won last week against the Jaguars because it does make that game a little bit more desirable to watch. I think it'd be a pretty easy win for us. And you know me, I like my teams to win, but if it's a great game and everyone gets to see us finally show out and beat a team that everyone's looking forward to watching instead of the Rams on like a 4 or 5 game losing streak, I'm down for that. I want to embarrass the Rams after. Any Rams fans come at me too this week because you guys aren't winning. You're losing this week, and we're going to be 11-2.
Nick's ready for all the smoke. Nick wants all the smoke. Bring it.
I want all the smoke. I'm pretty sure Green Bay will beat the Bears. But with the Bills playing Tampa Bay, I'm a little bit excited here. We might have a 2-game, like only one team we're battling, and that's Green Bay, as far as supremacy in the NFC. So I'm excited. Jared, I'll tell you this though, I'm a little bit excited. Let's get to this Cowboys game. Cowboys Washington. I got to talk to you about this because the Cowboys, again, it's been a month worth of games. They didn't look great against New Orleans, right? And then the other games are losses, and then the one game against Atlanta that you guys blew them out. Talk about your team a little bit. What has to change to beat a really, really good defense in Washington this week when it just has not looked good? And you guys did get Amari Cooper back, CeeDee Lamb, all these guys. Zeke Elliott's still playing. Tony Pollard, right? Like, how do you guys win this game and look good doing it too?
It's a good question. I really just want Dallas to win by any means necessary. I think them, trying to come out and dominate and expecting Dallas to win by 17 or 20 points might just be unrealistic, right? I mean, every single year as a Cowboys fan, this team gets way overhyped, right? It's like they every year, oh, this is the best Cowboys team that they've ever had. They have the most talent that they've ever had. And, for 6 weeks, they look like one of the top teams in the NFL. And then they kind of came down to earth. Obviously, Dak Prescott had that calf injury. They've had a multitude of injuries as well as being hit by COVID. not only from their players' perspective, but from a coaching perspective as well. Not having head coach Mike McCarthy last week, also not having some of their top assistants. So coming into this week against Washington, I think what I'm most excited about is they're going to be probably the healthiest that they've been all year long, right? They got DeMarcus Lawrence back last week. You already mentioned how they got on the offensive side of the ball Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb back. Well, on defense this week, they also get back Randy Gregory, defensive end, and Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle, who's been out all year.
Yeah.
So that defense is getting reinforced pretty well throughout the year. They've obviously had big points to the Raiders and all this stuff, but I think this defense that is very opportunistic. They get a good amount of turnovers per game. They're getting healthier on that defensive line, which is going to free up Micah Parsons, who really should be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, not just Rookie of the Year, to play linebacker, his natural position, and run sideline to sideline. So what I'm most excited about is more of them getting back to full strength, and hopefully this COVID situation is behind this team, because it could hit any team at any moment and really derail, not only a week but potentially a season. So I'm hoping that this Cowboys team can come out at close to full strength and start to show their dominance, right? Amari Cooper played maybe 50% of the snaps because it was his first game from COVID. And so I think hopefully with a full week of practice, his endurance will be better. CeeDee Lamb is back for a second week in a row. Ezekiel Elliott, they kind of get that mini bye because they did play last Thursday. And so they got this whole weekend off, and I'm sure they're probably back in the building today. But I think they got a chance to kind of rest a little bit and get that mini bye. So I expect Dallas to come out and win this game, but I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to blow out Washington.
Sure.
Washington's hot right now. They're one of the best teams, are playing some of the best football in all the NFL, right? And even though they've lost some players on defense, Chase Young, their best defender, that defense has played well down the stretch. So by no means will I say Dallas will, blow out Washington, but Dallas should, and they better come out and win this game. Period.
Oh no! Again, it's another must-win for the Cowboys, and this is because you need to win that division. If you beat Washington here, the Cowboys are the division winners, and they're going to get a home game in the playoffs. And they can avoid potentially playing my Cardinals or Tampa Bay or Green Bay in that first round, which is obviously what you want to do. Spread is in favor of Dallas by 4. I'd take that. I obviously Washington's games have all been close, but I think Dallas can score enough. I think they can beat 4. We'll see if that line moves up or in Dallas' favor. But yeah, interesting stuff. A lot of big games, like we said. We need to get the podcast ended because Monday Night Football is coming up soon. But yeah, like I said, big division games. Ravens, Browns. We also have Chiefs, Raiders, Cowboys, Washington, Cardinals, Rams on Monday Night Football. And then we have that big Bills, Buccaneers late Sunday game. Not Sunday Night Football, but late Sunday game. I kind of wish they would have flexed that out. Who wants to watch the Bears on Sunday Night Football? Nobody.
No thanks.
Yeah, no thanks.
That should be that should be a flex. That should be a Cowboys. Obviously, your Rams are playing on Monday night. That never gets flexed. The Cowboys Washington, that should get flexed to Sunday night. Either that game or Bills Bucks. One of those two games should get flexed to Sunday night because I'm sorry, the Bears don't deserve it. The Packers, yes. The Packers deserve to be in the spotlight. They're coming off of a bye. The Packers, speaking of a team that's getting players back, they're about to get their left tackle Bakhtiari back, who's their best lineman. They're about to get Jair Alexander back, their best corner, and they're about to get Smith, their Xavier Smith. Why I don't know why I can't think of his first name. Zadarius Smith, their edge rusher. So, like I said, talk about teams that are getting healthier as the season progresses. The Packers are one of those teams, along with the Cowboys as well. But yeah, flex the Bills or Bucks, or flex Dallas, Washington. Packers Bears is going to be a blowout. I don't care. I'm sure the weather's not going to be great, but that is not going to be as good. Flex it. I'm about to tweet at the NFL, tell them to flex it.
Yeah, please. I mean, you flexed Denver into a Sunday Night Football game last week. Why are we not flexing Tampa and the Bills? Maybe it's because they're Monday Night Football. But Tampa hasn't been on Sunday Night Football in a while, so come on, put them in. All right, Jim. Good podcast. We'll be back next week. Guys, we got Bowl Mania. We got all the college football bowls to talk about, and they don't start until the week after next week. So Jared and I are gonna pick our bowls and see how many we can get, and by the end of the season, heading into that national championship week, we'll discuss who won, and maybe one of us will have to wear the other team's jersey. That also will be after Cowboys Cardinals too, which is going to be insane. That's going to be an insane week. There's going to be a lot of bets being put down in 2022 to start the year, and one of us, or if not both of us, are going to be embarrassed multiple times in this podcast. Probably Jared, because we have the best team in the NFL. Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Shots fired.
We'll see.
Shots fired. All right, but this podcast has been done. We got to go watch Monday Night Football, Jared. We got some crazy weather to watch. What a game. We're excited. And then, like I said, next week we will not be recording on Monday because we're going to be wanting to talk about what happened to Cardinals and Rams. We'll be looking at Tuesday or Wednesday recording date for that game, and I will be way too drunk to record before the Cardinals game on Monday. So I can't do it.
Sure.
I'll tell you right now, Jared. I think you can understand, right? You can understand.
At least you're honest. At least
we're the NFC West champs if we win that game, essentially. So, big time stuff for my Cardinals, and the Cowboys got a big game too. Plenty of other teams do too. All right, for this podcast though, we are done. I am Nick Nenad,
and I'm Jared Smith.
and guys, we will see you next week.